How can enterprises keep pace with the rising complexity of hybrid environments without getting trapped in legacy infrastructure, technical debt, and overwhelmed by cloud sprawl? Well, in today's episode, I sat down with the field CTO of AlgoSec to learn more about how the company is shifting how we think about network security in everything from device-level management to application-centric connectivity. And while many still associate AlgoSec with traditional firewall oversights, today's conversation took something of a deeper turn, and a focus on intent-based security, visibility across multi-vendor environments, and highlighting the growing need to decouple applications from underlying infrastructure. So from Toronto today, our guest brings first-hand insights into how global enterprises are beginning to rethink their approach to how they secure application connectivity. He's going to be sharing real-world stories, including a compelling case study from a European financial institution that reduced policy change rejections from 25% to 4%. A move that's not just saving time, but accelerating innovation. And we'll also explore the shift towards automation and AI in network policy. And if we've got time, also the pitfalls of platformization and the power of building security into the design phase of every application deployment, rather than patching it in after the fact. So, what's driving this transition to application-centric policy design, and how can businesses future-proof their connectivity strategies in a fragmented world? Well, let's find out by getting my guest onto the podcast now. So, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Neil. My name is Kyle Wickert. I'm AlgoSec's field CTO. So I'm kind of responsible at AlgoSec globally for working really closely with a lot of our large and strategic customers, both pre-sales but also post-sales. Working a lot with them on different solutions with the technology. Been at AlgoSec 13 years, which seems like an eternity, but it's been a good eternity. And prior to that, I was with one of the large Canadian banks in their cybersecurity department.
Before we get cracking today, so much I want to talk with you about. I want to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. For people listening anywhere in the world, hearing about you guys for the first time, how would you describe what it is you guys do for anyone that's just learning about you for the first time?
Yeah, so we're all about managing and securing application connectivity, right? And I'm sure many people in the marketplace know us, actually. I'd be surprised if anyone didn't. We've been around a really long time, but everyone knows us as a firewall management company. And we'll get into it in some of the questions, I really hope, but when I think about why those rules are there, they're really there to enable applications. And so that's why we look at things through the lens of that application.
And there are so many things I want to talk with you about today, because every single day on this Daily Tech podcast, we try and take a different area in the world of business and technology, demystify it, put in a language everyone can understand. And one of the trends we're hearing a lot about at the moment is this rapid shift towards platformization, especially in enterprise IT. So tell me more about that and how this trend is impacting the way that networks are managed too, because I would imagine there's a lot of business and IT teams that are hearing more and more about this. But from what you're seeing, what's driving this?
Yeah, look, these days everybody's got a platform. It's pretty obvious. You go anywhere, everybody and their uncle has a platform they want to talk about. For me, when I work with our large customers, particularly large enterprise, what I see is it's primarily complexity driving the desire, at least, for wanting to platformatize everything you're doing. And particularly when it comes to network security, that's done with the idea that you're going to simplify things and reduce costs and be far more modular. There's some pros and cons to it, I think, right? If you're picking a particular platform, no matter what OEM it's from, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. And I think I have seen some situations where it starts to break down, right? As you become more complex beyond what the platform can tolerate, as you become multi-vendor, and regardless of what your network security vendor of choice is today in different environments, everyone's multi-vendor, right? You want to pick best of breed firewall, best of breed SD-WAN, best of breed cloud technology for whatever you're trying to do. So the platform model, I find, starts to break down a little bit as you become more complex and multi-vendor. And I think in the network security space, that's just it. That's where it starts to break down and where we start seeing the challenges being encountered in the real world, at least.
What are some of the most common challenges that you're seeing enterprises facing when they're actually trying to reduce that network complexity? Are there any trends in the kind of things you're seeing there?
Yeah. So what I see personally, the biggest challenge we're seeing in our business these days is the fragmentation across cloud, legacy infrastructure, and the tooling that gets deployed to try and bridge these visibility gaps, right? I think ever since the pandemic, you saw a huge shift to cloud, moving things to the edge, getting things as exposed as they can in the hands of users, moving applications and their connectivity there. Now you've got a little bit of a pivot back because everybody got the bill from cloud, or they're needing to leverage different crown jewel pieces of data or applications that reside in on-prem infrastructure. So what you're ending up with is these hybrid scenarios, right? Seldom today to make a business application work, are you just touching cloud? Are you just touching on-prem? You're needing to touch both and everything in between to make it work end to end. And it's leading to really strangely provisioned application connectivity with all kinds of different hairpins out of necessity. And within that, you're getting different risks that are coming to the forefront, both misconfiguration, but also baked in risks from design. And you combine that with kind of inconsistent governance along the way, and you've got a recipe for a lot of misalignment there. And so that's the number one challenge I see today, and it makes up a lot of what customers are calling us for, is these types of situations where they need to find a way to manage hybrid connectivity and have it in a single pane of glass. And I know single pane of glass is a marketing term, but for the most part, that's what it ends up being.
And I think over the last 5 years, we've gone from saying that every company is now a tech company to every company is now an AI company. But I'm curious, how are you at AlgoSec helping organizations adapt to this new future where infrastructure is increasingly being shaped by AI, and not to mention automation and edge computing too?
Yeah. So at its most fundamental level, what we're trying to do for companies is allow them to decouple what makes their important applications work from the underlying network. You'd be surprised, even in the age of AI, how many companies I talk to and I ask, why are those rules in the firewall? And they go, oh, just look at the comments. That'll tell you, what key important business function that's supporting. But the problem with that is you're just so tightly married to those policies. And if you wake up tomorrow and you want to modernize and deploy a key application with AI infrastructure running in the cloud, maybe you want to start taking advantage of MCP and AI proxies, or just modernize a legacy application, you're so tightly coupled, you can't start really approaching it through the lens of a far more modern automation approach or segment or any of these other more advanced tasks when you're so married to the policy, so to speak.
And in what ways do you think traditional network management strategies are maybe falling short in this new hyper-connected API first environment? I say it has been moving this way for quite a few years now, but it's getting more and more complex. So how are those traditional methods falling short now?
They're still very much ad hoc, device-based, and static. It's really interesting and always surprising to me. I've said I've been at AlgoSec 13 years and it feels like an eternity, but it's interesting when I talk to different businesses and enterprises. What keeps me excited is the fact there's still a surprising amount of enterprises handling risk management of policies. And by the way, not just on firewalls, SDN, SASE, SD-WAN, cloud, handling it in a very static and manual way. And I'll give you a great example, right? One of the large enterprises I was working with recently in the US, I started talking to them about our app-centric approach to managing policy. And they said, you know what, Kyle, we don't want to talk about applications. We just want to talk about firewall rules and changes. And I said, okay, fine. How are you getting these change requests that are driving your modernization? And they told me, well, every business user has a spreadsheet. And when they need something new, they add a row to the bottom of that spreadsheet and they send an email. And this is in 2025. And I said, okay, well, great. That spreadsheet's your application. That's what that business user needs to make their thing work. And so that really was what made them pivot and understand, that app-centric approach we're trying to take.
Wow, it's just crazy to think that there's still that the role of the spreadsheet is so important, even in large enterprises. But we've both seen it time and time again. And Well, just to bring to life what we're talking about here, I don't expect you to name any names, but are there any real world examples that you could share of where AlgoSec has helped a business successfully transition towards a more agile and platformized network infrastructure? Because I think there'll be so many people listening, know what they need to do, know what they want to do, but know where to start and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's where we could maybe provide a little inspiration to them.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of a large European financial customer of ours. So they're a global bank. They've successfully been able to automate the provisioning of policies across the firewalls and the cloud infrastructure, right? So for them, it was bringing it all together in one view and provisioning connectivity across it. They also tightly integrated that with their CI/CD pipelines, their ITSM. So for the customer experience, and I'm talking about our customer, I'm talking about their internal customer. It's a seamless experience, right, from an IT marketplace. They're not coming in saying, I need this firewall rule on this device combined with this NSG on that piece of infrastructure. Why? Because the customer doesn't understand the network security infrastructure. And so for them, they have a seamless marketplace to do that. And this particular customer, I think, is a great example because they're well along the journey. And they're at the point now where they're actually iteratively even improving what they're doing with us and working their way up the maturity model. And they actually made some recent changes in how they're approaching it and what they're exposing to the customers. And they actually took some of our capabilities and exposed them even before a change request is submitted. And one of the metrics they improved on was actually change deflection and change rejection. So they actually reduced their change rejection rate from approximately 25% down to about 4%. And what does that mean? It means their users that are asking for connectivity are getting what they want the vast majority of the time. It was a massive reduction in friction and pain in the process for them.
And presumably, I would imagine CIOs and the network teams, they need to be rethinking their security postures as this platformization accelerates right across the enterprise. Any tips or advice on how they should be doing that or what they need to be doing?
Yeah, I think at a fundamental level, you really want to focus on intent based on applications and how they need to communicate rather than just simply ad hoc perimeter-based policies. Obviously, the perimeter is a blurry line and it eroded many, many moons ago, but it's expanded to the point where you're touching so many different enforcement technologies because you want to run best of breed, like we spoke about, at the perimeter, in the data center, and everywhere in between. You want to fundamentally focusing on what the intent really is and what you need to communicate end to end, and then be able to validate that intent ongoing. Right? It's one thing to be able to just drive automation and implement policy, even if it's intent-based, ad hoc. You want to be able to verify that ongoing and really shift to then focusing on how is that app connectivity, how is that intent, A, working from an availability standpoint to make the business run, but then B, ensure that it's secure ongoing, despite the fact that that underlying infrastructure is changing.
And while we have the ear of people listening in IT departments around the world, what role do you see visibility and policy automation playing in ensuring more consistency and indeed security across such fragmented hybrid environments? Because it's a huge challenge, probably keep more than a few IT leaders awake at night. But tell me more about that.
Yeah, look, maybe it's cliche, but there's the old adage, right? You can't secure what you can't see. It's fundamental, I think. And interestingly enough, what we see here is a big convergence going on that I think is going to drive a need for more visibility. So as I said, right, over the last few years, a lot of folks moving a lot of things out into the cloud, and you had different operational models, different teams managing that infrastructure. Now there's a convergence that I see of it's not the cloud security team and the traditional security team. It's just one security team managing that unified infrastructure. And so you need tooling that can bring that visibility and observability all into one place. Avoid the human error and the misconfiguration, react quickly, or shift the game and become proactive in terms of what's making its way into that infrastructure. And again, I want to reiterate, it's more than just firewalls. Firewalls are a core part of the model, but it's SD-WAN, it's cloud, it's being able to see across all of that in one view troubleshoot across it. And if you're ready to take that leap, then obviously automate across it, like the earlier example I gave of that large financial.
And from your unique vantage point here, is there anything else that enterprise leaders should be doing to maybe better prioritize and future-proof their networks and ultimately be more proactive and stay ahead of evolving threats and emerging technologies? Anything you could advise here?
Yeah, my recommendation and some of the things I see some of the large successful enterprises doing is just baking that security design in, particularly when it comes to connectivity, as early as you can in the provisioning of these applications, whether they're new business applications or applications you're trying to modernize or move to the cloud, baking in that security design early on. And not just security design, even the understanding and documentation and design work around the connectivity, right? It's still amazing. The quote unquote firewall change process in a lot of large enterprises, even though it's at the tail end of something, it still ends up acting as the gate, right? You've got this security analyst with something dropped on his lap to open some policy somewhere in the infrastructure, and it's the first time anyone's getting wind that this application is being provisioned or these two things need to communicate to one another, and that becomes a gate in the process and just adds friction because everyone's trying to ram through this change very, very quickly. And if you can change the game and actually shift that to the beginning, you can empower the business to be more efficient. Suddenly there's a lot less friction and you drastically increase the satisfaction with the process, in addition to being more secure, right?
100%. And something else I try and do on this podcast is give my guests an opportunity to bust a few myths or misconceptions. And like everyone, you must be scrolling news feeds on a daily basis, seeing things that are true, that you resonate with you and you can relate to, and a lot of things that may frustrate you. Are there any myths and misconceptions we can lay to rest today once and for all?
Yeah, I think it would be kind of where I started the podcast, right? It's really what AlgoSec does as an organization. We are so much more than firewall management. It's amazing. So many folks come up to me at trade shows and things like that. Oh, AlgoSec, hey, can you help us clean up our firewalls? Absolutely. That was where we were born. That's a core part of our business, but it really is so much more than that. It's that decoupling of intent, what makes applications work from the security policy infrastructure, and taking that all the way beyond the data center, really, really deep into the cloud with what we're doing for customers these days. So that would be my biggest misconception.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can finally lay that to rest now. And we did start the podcast today talking about your story and the journey that you've been on. And as we come full circle now, I think none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So if I now ask you to look back at your career, was there anyone that maybe saw something in you, invested a little time in you, or just someone that you're grateful towards that have helped you along the way that maybe we can give a shout out to today?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously been many, role models and mentors I've had in my career. Maybe I'll give a shout out to Brent Thomas. So he's a security professional here in Canada. Saw something in me very early on in my career. Took me in as a co-op student and intern in my early days at the large Canadian bank I worked at. He took a leap of faith in me, and here we are, 16 years or so later, and we still keep in touch. But thank you very much to him for helping me get where I am.
Wow, I love it. A quick shout out to him there. Hopefully he gets to hear this. And one of the reasons I asked that question, I think we've all got people like that in our lives. And I think those selfless individuals that do put themselves in our lives and transform our careers, they're blissfully unaware of just the scale of the impact that they've had. So I really hope he gets to hear this as you're on the podcast today. And for anyone listening wanting to find out more about AlgoSec, and especially as we busted a few myths today, how you might be able to help them on that journey of reducing complexity, where would you like to point everyone?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'll point everyone to our website. Please, if you're interested in learning more, have a look, reach out if you'd like a demo to understand really what we're talking about when it comes to that decoupling of app connectivity from the infrastructure. Reach out, learn more. If you want to get a hold of me directly, we can share our contact information. I'm also available on LinkedIn, Reddit, easy to contact if you want to do something a little bit off the record as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll have links to everything there. We covered a lot today, from why enterprises are rapidly shifting to platformization and the challenges in managing network complexity. Very real. Equally are the challenges around the future of enterprise networking and how AI automation and edge computing are indeed reshaping the infrastructure, and why traditional network management is no longer enough in this hyperconnected AI and API-driven world. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I would urge everyone listening to check out the links attached to these show notes. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today, Carl.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks for having me, Neil. Really appreciate the time. Maybe we can do it again.
I think it's clear, having spoken with my guest today, that the old playbook for managing networks no longer holds up in today's hybrid cloud-native world. The way forward lies in focusing on the application, not just the infrastructure, and building security into the earlier stages of design. And with intent-based networking, when paired with visibility and policy automation, these things collectively can eliminate that ad hoc, spreadsheet-driven chaos that is still present in so many enterprises. But I think what stood out most was this idea of decoupling application functionality from the network configuration. And it's things like this that open the door to agility and enable teams to scale, adapt, and deploy AI-driven capabilities without being held back by manual processes or outdated governance. And the story he shared today of the European financial firm, that wasn't just an example of success. For me, it showed that transformation is attainable when organisations commit to simply rethinking their network posture. So here's my takeaway. IT leaders must move from reactive to proactive, something I'm hearing more and more, and from perimeter-based policies to application-defined intent, and from fragmented oversight to unified visibility. So if you're still asking what firewall needs to be changed instead of why does the application need it in the first place, maybe it's time for a fresh look. So tell me, is your organisation ready to rethink how it manages connectivity, security and modernisation at scale? Pop over to techtalksnetwork.com. You'll find links to all the episodes, all of my podcasts. You can send me a message, and you can even hit record and send me a voice message, so I can hear your voice for once. But let me know, and I will speak with you all again tomorrow morning. Bye for now.